Max Verstappen thinks Formula 1 should just stick to the main race and doesn't understand why the series still have 6 sprint races starting in 2023. Do you agree with Verstappen, or are sprint races essential for Formula 1 in the future? Let us know your thoughts about the sprint races in the comments below. Prior to changing the format for this year, Formula 1 introduced its sprint race model at 3 races in 2021. This year, the format includes the return of giving the pole position to the driver who finished first in qualifying on Friday. The final starting grid for Sunday's race is then determined by the sprint race results. This weekend, F1 will stage its final sprint of the 2022 season in Brazil, before expanding to 6 events, which have not yet been confirmed. Verstappen, the 2-time world champion, said he prefers a traditional weekend schedule, and that drivers tend to be cautious since there is a chance they may wreck their cars or fall to the back of the pack in the Saturday sprint races. Every time I do these sprint races, it's about don't get damaged, make sure you stay in the top 3, said Verstappen. For me, that's not really a race, because you go into the main race and you know there are way more points available anyway, you just risk a bit more there. You do another start, which is exciting, but it's only really people who are out of position that move forwards, because you only put on a tyre that lasts the whole stint and not much happens. Verstappen said Formula 1 should just stick to the main race, rather than adding an additional sprint to the weekend schedule. I don't understand what the problem is for that, because we've had so many exciting races, so you don't need to add 1/3 of a race distance, Verstappen said. Everyone is so careful anyway, because if you're fighting for third and you have a little touch and you drop to last, you know your Sunday is going to be tough. Probably you won't risk it, so that's not really a race. The expansion of the sprint race format in 2023 has the backing of F1 teams and was approved by the FIA at the most recent World Motorsport Council meeting. Before the Grand Prix on Sunday, sprints were held this year in Imola and the Red Bull Ring, providing varied amounts of on-track excitement. In the sprint race at Interlagos last year, Lewis Hamilton made a strong move from the last spot on the grid to finish 4th, before going on to win the Grand Prix on Sunday. The Mercedes driver felt F1 had to be very selective where it held sprint races, favouring tracks where overtaking was easier, but he had liked the format because it was different. "We've had the same Thursday to Sunday for God knows how long," said Hamilton. "It was supposed to be a 3-day weekend this year, and then they changed it back to 4-day, which I wasn't too happy about. The races are not always the greatest. It does create a few more options, but sometimes there's no overtaking. So we should hopefully learn from the races where there's been no overtaking in the sprint races. Putting them in places like Brazil that creates a lot of opportunity, or somewhere like Baku, is going to be the best place for overtaking. I'm not against it, as long as they're selected of where they put it. But winning this time at Interlagos seems to be far-fetched, as Mercedes recently revealed they lost 8 to 10 months of development time getting the 2022 car up to speed and problem-free. The W13 had a difficult season for the German automaker because it suffered greatly from excessive bouncing in the beginning. Mercedes took several months to fully grasp the situation and make the necessary car modifications that have allowed Lewis Hamilton and George Russell to advance during the second half of the season. While it was able to control the porpoising, the fact that its car still lacked some acceleration hurt its prospects of defeating Red Bull for the race win. The team suffered from not being able to work on performance increases until it had resolved its problem, which caused it to lag behind the leaders. Toto Wolff, the team boss for Mercedes, believes that his team is still playing catch-up right now, making it difficult for them to get back in the race for triumphs when the 2023 season gets underway. "We believe that we understand where the gap comes from," he said when asked if he felt that Red Bull's early advantage with F1's new 2022 rules would put it in good stead for years to come. "They will carry over some of their sweetness in the car, and we've maybe lost 8 to 10 months in terms of development because we couldn't figure out what was wrong, so there's definitely a challenge. But we're playing the long game here, all of us. Both drivers are playing the long game, the team. The judge around the team of performance is not based on a single year or weekend. It's how we have been able to win championships over the long term. Due to Ferrari's 2 challenging weekends in the US and Mexico, Mercedes has emerged as Red Bull's main competition in recent races. Even while Red Bull still seems to have an advantage, Mercedes believes that the remaining 2 races will feature a 3-way battle as it seeks its first victory of 2022. Chief strategist James Vowles said, Ferrari won't be that far back and away from us as they were in Mexico. They'll be closer in Brazil and Abu Dhabi, and it will be a very close fight between our two teams. In terms of relative to Red Bull, they still hold the edge relative to us. I don't think it's quite the 3 tenths they outqualified us by in Mexico, but it will be a few tenths across the next few races. We are getting closer and closer compared to where we were at the beginning of the season, where at times we were struggling to get out of Q1 or into Q3, to where we are now, which is we are within a whisker of fighting for our first win. We have moved forward. In Brazil, it's a track that both our drivers have typically gone well at, and it is a sprint race where we can pick up more points. And when you have a car within a few tenths of your competition, you can make things happen. Will Mercedes be able to challenge the front runners again? Who knows? One thing is strange, and that is that Mercedes are contradicting themselves a little bit. As chief strategist James Vowles said before that, Mercedes won't be able to challenge the front runners Red Bull and Ferrari in Brazil. As James Vowles could be heard saying the following on their own race debrief. It's really hard to tell before we go to an event, but I don't think we'll quite enjoy the same level of competitiveness. It won't be much different, but it might be a little step backwards, and I certainly expect Ferrari to be closer than they were in Mexico. Yes, it's higher altitude than normal. I think it's around 700 meters compared to sea level, but it's also a factor of what the track layout is and what downforce level people are at. As I mentioned previously, we really function well on these high downforce circuits, and that's not what we have coming up in Brazil. But their intentions for the end of the season are clear, as they're trying to finish second in the championship. It's very clear what our internal goal is, he said. We are here to finish second in the championship, and every single race that we can start pulling that points gap down is a success. In Mexico, we took just 13 points out of them, so there's still 40 left to go with 2 races. Fortunately, one of those is a sprint race. I think we have a package now, unlike the beginning of the season or the mid-season, that can really bring the fight to them. But 40 points is a tremendous ask. It will need us really having everything perfect, everything right, and Ferrari perhaps to give us opportunities to open the door for us to pick up second. What I can tell you is that we're not giving up until the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi. Will the Mercedes drivers be able to produce a good result in Brazil? One thing is certain, and that is that the sprint race will help Mercedes to move up the grid on Saturday. They have nothing to lose and everything to gain at the moment. What are your thoughts on the sprint races? Do you enjoy them, or are they too big of a burden for the drivers? Or should they reward more points for the sprint to combat the safe racing of the drivers? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to discuss it with you guys. That's all for today. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next video.